Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth UK Live. Joining me tonight is Lawrence Wright. How you doing, Lawrence?
Oh, good evening to you, Nathan. And in case I miss you later, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Truman Show.
Was that a little Mark Sargent dig or what?
I was just copying you, but I think you did it a little bit better. I think you rehearsed it a little bit better than I did.
Maybe you can kick us off by telling us how you found out the Earth is flat, Lawrence.
Well, I'm a sort of what you call a die-hard conspiracy theorist, or, a bit long in the tooth. Been doing it for since about the year 2000, when the first conspiracy came along, which was the moon landings. And believe it or not, back in 2000, most people thought the moon landings were real, and they thought I was completely crazy. And that led on to, a couple of years later, 2002. Well, what else would they lie about? And I just went onto my laptop and typed in 911 conspiracy, and then everything came up on the screen, and that was it. Totally engrossed for 3 or 4 years. And I was a bit of a maverick in the 9/11 truth community, because I was one of the first in there saying that those are not real planes, they're just cartoons that have been, CGI'd into the footage. And the debates they went on for days and weeks and months, and the threads, on the forums, the threads just used to go on for years. Same threads, people arguing the case, and it led to all the other conspiracies about money and health and fraudulent governments and the free man movement, all that sort of stuff. And back at Christmas 2013, I found this documentary saying that nuclear weapons were a big hoax, and probably nuclear fuel and nuclear submarines. And I watched that and I thought, they will lie about absolutely anything. And the words flat Earth came into my head. What would be the biggest conspiracy? Flat Earth. And half an hour later, yep, I was a flat earther, because you can glean a lot of information in half an hour, to make a sort of a judgment call on whether you think there's any substance to it. And there was quite a bit of stuff out there. The main YouTubers then was a guy called Jay Henning Cologia and Rory Cooper. It was basically those two guys, and they did put out a lot of good work. Henning Cologia sort of dropped away now and doesn't do very much, but he was doing full-length documentaries, and Rory was doing the visuals where he would sort of have a spinning globe and a man painting pictures and stuff, and showing what it should look like if we were on a spinning ball. And that was it. I was a flat earther, but there weren't any other flat earthers in the UK. I was like a lone voice, and I spent months spamming everybody, sending personal messages to like 300 Facebook friends. I got, a lot unfriended by a lot of Americans.
I was about to say about that.
Yeah, and but I was totally burnt out with it by the autumn of 2014. So I just took a 3-month break from Facebook, and then come, January, February, 3 months later, I just got a sign up back, because you can suspend your Facebook account. So I went back in, and immediately got added to this flat Earth page. I thought, what's all this about? And the guy who set it up was one of the guys who told me he was a nutter, the previous year, and that was one of the first Facebook flat Earth sites. And then it snowballed, and now it's hundreds. And, I've actually, because you just get reams of stuff coming up because you get all these notifications. And I just decided, right, I'm just getting out of this, so I cancelled all of them, bar one. Next thing you know, I'm in another 30. People are just setting them up, like, they call it flat Earth bitching and stuff like that. There's just loads of sites. It's really big.
Did you find that straight away it was into the ridicule of the idea of flat Earth then on Facebook?
Oh, I got into endless debates with ball earthers, but because I hadn't actually studied all the stuff that was out there, with hindsight, some of it is wrong. But I used to get into endless debates, and obviously all the true reasons the Earth are flat. The ball earthers kept losing the arguments, and they kept going through the 3 stages of truth and getting very angry with me. And but some of them did come back eventually and say, yeah, you're right, and they apologised. But yeah, that was the way it was. And you spend a lot of time having endless debates with people and debunking all their arguments. And then late last year, I thought, I'm not happy with the way it's going. It seems to be, I'm not happy with the model. So I got in touch with Laurie Frary, and we started this show on the Using Her channel. And that's been going for whatever, about 16, 17 weeks now. So, we're the channel that tells it as it is, and we don't care if we upset people,
Oh, quite so. I mean, I know that some of the people who are in the chat feed tonight are going to be keen to get straight onto things like maps and models. But the question that's probably my question, and I find it most pertinent, is can we actually map where we live?
Well, any map that you do, you're going to have to use some official information. So people will say, well, how can you trust anything? And people would go down to the length, well, how can you trust them when they say that aeroplanes fly at 550 miles an hour? But yeah, with maps, if you can, so when I'm looking at maps, you're right there, Nathan. When I'm looking at maps, so I've actually drawn the framework of a map. It's in another room at the moment. You need to try and verify it. So I will verify it with airline routes for as many as possible. Did 51, and they all fitted. Most of them were within 5%. A lot of them were spot on, and the worst ones were. There was a couple at 15% out, but they had got what you call great circle routes. You ever see a great circle route? They're doing these big loops, and it would appear that they're actually taking these routes from the information that I found. So you draw your map, and you plot the cities using the longitude and latitude, which I drew out all the longitude and latitude for the map that I'm using now. You plot out all the cities, the airports, where they are, and draw lines between them all and measure them. You have a scale to the map. So I think I was doing a scale of 1 centimetre equals 1,000 miles. I forget where it is, but I've got it written on the map. And then you measure it all out and see whether it fits. And it did. And then you can re-verify that information with the longitude and latitude calculators, which will also give you the distance between two points, the coordinates of a couple of airports. And then you can actually go at the real-time live flights from the travel companies and see how far they say the distance is and how long it takes the journey. So if the planes are traveling at an average speed of 480 to 550 when you factor it in, and that stacks up, then I would say that is probably the best information that we have for verifying a map.
I mean, you've got the standard sort of accepted flat Earth model, if you want to call it that, and that's known as the azimuthal equidistant projection, which in and of itself is not actually a map, but that you have conclusively debunked, or at least to my satisfaction, along with a whole load of other people. Why do you think that quote-unquote map has been left in plain sight for us to discover?
Well, my own personal view is that the AE map goes with the dome theory. You need a circular map to put one of these glass domes over the top of it. So any other map, you'd be struggling to put some kind of enclosure around it, and I think that's why they put that forward. But if you go back to Robotham, he's the guy who brought in the ice wall, as far as I can see, the circular map with the ice wall, and he got no good evidence to prove that. It was all speculation. And then you've got the United Nations using a similar shaped map from the 1940s. And then you've had all these organisations like the Civil Aviation Authority, the Maritime Authority, the Meteorological Authority, the World Health Organization, and various other official bodies using this AE map as part of their logo. The World Health Organization, that's a pretty good one because they've got a big serpent on it, and their job is to destroy people's health and have all these vaccination programs where they make people infertile and things like that. So
would you say the AA map has been put there to be part of the controlled opposition against Flat Earth?
I think it's been put there to be found, yeah. And that's why you're getting people finding it in movies like, there's a few movies. I know there's the Back to the Future movie, and there's one or two others that have come out now with this modelling where, how on earth these people found it, who told them that they were there? I mean, you'd have to go through it frame by frame to find that. So I think this information has been said, you might want to take a look at this. Somebody was told to tell somebody, and then it finds its way onto YouTube. But, you know, I'm as guilty as anybody else, because when I came into it, you know, flat Earth's a conspiracy site. You know, why are they going to, you know, you wouldn't even think that they would be lying about the information that you give. And so I went with the AE map and did presentations with it, and, you know, to demonstrate the flights and all that sort of stuff in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, and I got no reason to think it wasn't, but I didn't check it. I didn't do any maths or anything to check it. But I mean, like today, I decided, you know, let's take another look at this AE map. What else is wrong with it? And you've got the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. Well, now I've got this new software that you can use to look at longitude and latitude. You can work out the distance between the poles, and that's about 12,500 miles. So a bit of basic trigonometry. You've got 2 pi, which is 6 point something, times 12,500 miles makes the ice wall, fictitious ice wall, about 78,000 miles around. And the Tropic of Capricorn is twice the distance around that the Earth actually is. It's, you know, it's about 48,000 miles, which is...
I'm sure they talked it in some old texts as being something like 75,000 miles when they circumnavigated it off the coast at about 20 miles or something like that. I'm sure I've seen that in loads of flat Earth videos.
They've done the old sailors, haven't they? There's information documented there saying they actually, well, they may well have been driving over, if it's all ice, they may be going around the same place. They might not even know, you know, where they're at. But I think.
Sorry, go on.
So I think Antarctica is actually a continent of sorts. You know, it's not an ice wall; it's a continent to the south.
I mean, without going there, we're not going to know, and we're still speculating. But the thing that you chatted to me about on the phone that sort of really set it home about the AE map in particular was to do with the sun. And there's lots of people trying to plot maps now with the sun. But you pointed out something with the sundial. So do you want to explain to the audience exactly what you explained to me?
Well, obviously, the sun itself, it moves between the two tropics, Cancer in the north, Capricorn in the south. And so at any given point in the year, it's going to be directly overhead within those parameters. So for those areas, people who want to use a sundial, they can't use a conventional one, because for part of the time, it's not going to work. When the sun's directly overhead, what you'll find that in the morning, the sundial will create a long shadow, and that shadow won't move around the sundial. It will just shorten till noon when there's no shadow, and in the afternoon it will lengthen again in a straight line. So you can actually do experiments to do this yourself. I've done it myself. You just get you know, one of these mug holders or a stick, put it in a dark room and get a big torch and pretend the torch is the sun, and you can actually simulate the sun, and you do get these shadows that do not go around the stick or the sundial. Now, if the Earth was, as we were told, the AE map, and the sun is circling around, it wouldn't matter where you were. If something's circling around you, then you're always going to get shadows moving around the sundial. But you don't, because the sun's moving in a straight line.
I mean, it's nice to almost go along and play devil's advocate with some of the globalists, and I don't want people who've watched 10 minutes of the show to think that that's what we're doing. So maybe we can move on a little bit and move to things that debunk the globe. So is there a particular globe debunking that you hold close to heart?
Well, I always get, when I get into discussions on YouTube, you know, there's a guy called 5 Red Pears, and I keep asking him the same question. So today, he agreed with me on basically on my information about the AE map, you know, the trigonometry and stuff. He couldn't argue with it. In fact, I posted the comment on about 100 YouTubes today, and I've had loads of comments back saying they agree, and nobody's debunked it. Sorry, what was the question again? I went off at a tangent, Nathan.
That's all right. I was kind of asking what is there a specific...
Oh, yeah, my best. Yeah, so this guy called 5 Red Pears on YouTube, I said, and by the way, I said, you know, I flew over to Florida recently, and from the UK, it's about 4,300 miles. And if we use your conventional maths of 8 inches, 8 inches times the distance squared, it works out that over that journey, the plane would have to come down 2,300 miles or thereabouts. And if that was the case, for every 2 miles traveled, the plane would have to descend a mile. The nose would be down for the entire journey. Can you please explain why this doesn't happen when I take these aircraft flights? And of course, they never can, and they all change the subject. None of them can answer that. You know, but you get some people say, "Oh, it's gravity. Gravity brings the plane down to exactly the correct height, so it stays at the right cruising altitude." They haven't got an answer for it because there isn't one. And that's the best one for me. You know, the curvature one, I'm in disagreement with most flat earthers with curvature because I look at the globe as though you were looking at it from space, as we're told it is. And if you're in the UK and you look where we are, we're at 50 degrees latitude, you can get in your car and drive downhill to the south coast because it will be downhill. You get on a plane and you're going at 40, you're going to be going at 45 degrees. You get to the equator and you're going to be dive bombing to travel that way. You know, so I don't agree with the Bedford level experiment and stuff like that, because all these calculations they use for curvature, they assume that you're at the top of the globe and that everywhere is up. But obviously everywhere wouldn't be up. You know, if it was real, then you could have photographs from space, or they could zoom in and they could see airplanes flying upside down in the southern hemisphere and people walking upside down and people standing out at right angles at the equator. Well, that's never going to happen, is it?
That's it. We're never going to see NASA footage of somebody in Australia throwing a ball up and having the ball come back towards the feet of the people in Great Britain. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Or buildings hanging off the earth.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever had this thought when you're a child? You know, I went into the garden once and dug a hole. I was going to dig a hole all the way to Australia, and I got down about 4 foot and it got really hard, and that was it. But you know, you think, well, why couldn't they dig a hole all the way through and have a tunnel?
Yeah, we were talking about this on the phone the other day. I know that Bob or Xanadu from the Globebusters team holds a very similar sort of real-world flat Earth proof as I do in the respect of air travel, although he actually pilots planes and I was only ever a passenger. But you'd get on one of these long-haul flights and you'd look out the window on either side of the plane and see the massive expanse, and you'd travel for 10, 12, 14, however many hours. And at the end of your journey, you're told you're on the other side of a ball, but it's not what you've witnessed. It's not what you've experienced at all.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny that Laurie mentioned it on one of the recent shows. She got an email from somebody who worked in the airline industry, and he was banging one of the air hostesses after, you know, where they stop over. And in the pillow talk, she told this guy that the Earth was flat.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Mm.
So you get. I mean, I've had emails from a pilot, you know, who attended my talk, and he knows full well that, you know, and I posted it on Facebook, whatever, 18 months ago. Some pilots do know it's flat, but they're not going to talk about it because, you know, it's like saying that you've seen a UFO and you're going to, you know, lose your job.
Well, I was going to come on to maybe a bit about gyroscopes later, but before we go off topic, can you tell us a bit of the history of the sinusoidal map?
Well, yeah. Well, the first time, see what happened there was I bought a load of very expensive technical drawing graph paper. It was on a huge roll, about 10 meters long, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and draw this map of the world and use airports for it. So I drew in, you know, me 90 degrees north, south latitude, 180 degrees west and east, and started plotting in all the airports, and very little fitted, you know, particularly places like North America. So the distance between Anchorage and London and Orlando and London are roughly the same. But on the Mercator map, it was like twice as far to get to Anchorage. So I had the thought in my head that what we needed to do was concertina the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere towards the top, concertina it in, and then these places would be in the correct distance away from each other. And I looked at hundreds of maps and I couldn't find anything. And I was just looking over Mark Sargent's to see if anything was hidden in plain sight. So I went on to Mark Sargent's flat Earth clues again, and decided to watch them all the way through. And lo and behold, on the first one, the introduction, what do I see? I see the AE map with all these Pac-Men in it. And I'm thinking, what? Pac-Men? You know, because we were talking about the Pac-Man Earth. And I thought, you know, has he done that deliberately? And then I decided to count all the pieces on it, and there were 69. So I thought, well, that's a bit of a coincidence. And then I got onto his map makers, and he was flashing up all these maps. And I saw one. I thought, that's it. So I froze the screen and started looking for it, which was the sinusoidal. I sent off an image. I got a big poster blown up and plotted all the routes on it. And overall, they were 2% out. Some of them, you know, some were 10% out.
Quite a famous user, does it not?
That one is used by NASA for mapping out stuff, and it's used by the CIA, believe it or not. And I was going with that until after the show I presented it, and because I wasn't happy with the distances across the Earth in the higher latitude. So it was it was 2,000 miles too far across at 60 degrees. So I thought, you know, if we could shave a bit off, you know, or find the right map. And then I had the thought that, you know, a lot of people are saying it's twice as wide as it is high. So I decided to draw something twice as wide as it is high and join up the dots, checking on the longitude and latitude calculators. You can go, and if you go onto Google and type in latitude calculator, you can put in coordinates from one side of the Earth to the middle. You can't do the whole thing, because then it would take the shortest route. So you do half of it, and then do the other half is exactly the same. Add the two together. That gives you the distance across at a given latitude. So I did the equator, 10 degrees north, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And it was the same for the south. And I did all the way up. When you get up to about 89.5, it's about 40 miles across. And then a plot of these on my graph paper and joined up the dots. And I got this perfect diamond shape. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I started looking for maps with a diamond, and I found the Edward Calignan map from the 1800s. So, and I looked at that, and the difference between that and a conventional map, other than with it being a diamond shape, was that the latitude lines go across parallel, but the longitude lines, they all converge at the poles. And then the next stage was what? So it took me hours to draw, because you've got to do it accurately, otherwise it's going to be meaningless. So, you know, I got my pencil out and, you know, drew all these lines of longitude and latitude in, filled them all in, and then I decided to start plotting airports. So I did about 20, 25 airports, and then started doing the routes, and they were coming out very accurate, especially north to south and east to west. So over the equator, absolutely spot on across and down. You know, if you're staying on the same longitude going down north south, the map was matching reality perfectly. There's a few that, pardon me, where they're going, you know, huge distances, and they're cutting across like diagonal. They're like exaggerated great circle routes, and they were coming out a bit further. Like Australia was coming out about 1,000 miles further than what it is on the map. So when you look at the airline routes, they show a big circle as to how it's going. But in the main, they were very accurate. You know, 2% out for all the routes that I did. I think I did 51 routes.
Sure.
And some of them triangulated perfectly. So I, you know, managed to get quite a few, you know, get 3 route places, and you could lock them all in. So you know that these continents were in the correct places relative to each other, because if you can triangulate it, that's what they use to find you when you've, you know, with your mobile phone. If you're lost somewhere, they can actually find out where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I followed along with your workshop, and you showed all the logical steps that you took to come to the conclusions. And we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I said I may or may not do this, but to put my conspiratorial hat on and say, well, all of the sources of information that you've got this cross-reference to, sometimes within 20 miles, and it all stacked up, some might say, a bit too nicely. Do you think that maybe 5 years down the line, someone will just come along and tear your work to shreds in the same way the AE map has?
Well, to do that, they'd have to say that longitude and latitude are incorrect. They just made all that stuff up, but they've been using that for navigating for hundreds of years, and it's it's used for GPS and navigation systems and stuff like that. So they'd have to say that. They'd probably have to say that you're flying on an aeroplane at 500 miles an hour, but it's only really doing 300. They'd have to be lying about stuff like that. You can't argue about the shape of the Earth if longitude and latitude is correct, because you people at home, you can map it out yourself. If you just go on a search engine and type in latitude calculator, 4 coordinates, where you're going from, where you're going to, and it'll give you the distance. So you can do the distance across the Earth, and you can do the pole to pole. You map it all in, and you've got this perfect diamond. The routes fit, the routes tally with official. You go on flight math, and it'll give you the distance. And flight math is very, it's usually to within 1% of the actual official routes. When you go to book a holiday, click on the itinerary, and it'll say how many hours the flight is and how many miles it is. They're all these things are tallying. So, if people want to debunk it, then they've had some time to do it. Nobody has. They just want to argue the toss about the longitude lines converging.
I mean, how do you think they've actually hidden flat Earth from us?
Well, that's a good question, Nathan. And I think the main reason is because the flat Earth has some of the attributes of a sphere. So, I mean, if you look at where the map ends, it ends at the international date line, and then you look at you've got time and date, which ends at the international date line. Flight routes do, cruise routes do, but all these routes, when you watch them, they go over the line and then they reappear on the other side. And you can look at where this international date line is. There's nothing built over it. It's all, if it does go over land, then they don't build on it. And there are several military bases. There's one, I think it's Tonga, and 25% of the entire island is under military occupation. There's one between the Soviet Union bloc and the United States, and the Russians moved the entire population off and moved them back to the mainland. So it begs the question, what's going on there? And they've been talking about building this 50-mile link between Russia and the United States for hundreds of years, but it never happens. It's always going to happen tomorrow, or it's going to cost $10 trillion, or they're going to have to build 12,000 miles of roads to do it. If it was only 50 miles, they'd have built a bridge. They'd have built a bridge by now, because there'd be huge benefits for commerce to do it, but they don't. So when you look at official stuff, they pass off one side of the map and come to the other. So in my world, the flat Earth is the same as the globe. You can sail east and reappear in the west. And that's how they've got away with it, because it's got the same attributes as a globe, apart from, the polar regions, because I think that's the reason they don't want you to go to the polar regions. All the, Scott of the Antarctic, and that guy recently who died, and other people, have perished, and Jan Anderhoy was allegedly stopped by a gunship. I think the reason they don't want you to go there is that the North and South Pole are one and the same, and you could go down to the South Pole, and if you marched across it, you'd re-emerge in Greenland, the north of Greenland somewhere, and that would give the game away. But they get away with it, the oceans, because that is exactly the same as the globe, and that's what they would expect to happen.
I mean, there's a few people in the chat that are saying, have you seen Dr. Zach and his work, and you should compare notes? Have you actually seen some of the things?
Yes, Zach comments on my work. I mean, Zach's is a brilliant idea to do that, but the problem is he's relying on people buying these sextants and sticks and then getting accurate measurements and sending them into him. And you could have 50 flat earthers all having a go, and I think they'd make a bit of a dog's breakfast of it, to be honest. It's a bit too. If he's going to do it, he's going to need to do it himself. But in principle, yeah, it may well be a good idea, mapping out the sun.
We also spoke on the phone a little bit about some of the solar filming technology. Do you want to give us a little bit of an insight into that?
You've lost me there. Solar filming?
Yeah, about filming the sun. You made a note. I don't want to steal your thunder, but you made a note of one of the observations that they've made in the sun recently.
The Sun newspaper?
Nah, the sun. The sun in the sky.
You mean down the beach?
No, you were talking about them actually filming the sun.
Are you sure you've got me confused with somewhere else?
No, it's definitely you. I might wait for the penny to drop because it will come to you.
Right, mate. Filming the sun. I don't know. Matrix Deco has done one on the sun with a welder's camera type thing. You'll have to enlighten me some more, Nathan.
I'll dig it out in my notes. I can't remember myself.
I may be a bit of interview, unless I've got, I'm starting to get Alzheimer's at my age.
Well, there's something we can definitely talk about.
Coconut oil is very good for preventing Alzheimer's. Yeah, because the brain, most people's brain is fed from glucose because their diets are largely carbohydrate. You introduce coconut oil into your diet, what you're doing, you're introducing a second fuel source because the body burns ketones. And some Alzheimer's people have actually totally reversed it by introducing large amounts of coconut into their diet. So just a little side point there. Coconut oil, most healthy oil on the planet.
Yeah, I just had a quick look at my notes, and we were chatting about the actual camera technology that films the sun. That was the conversation that we were talking about.
That's completely slipped by, Nathan. You'll have to move down your list and get on to the next topic.
I think you might be breaking apart a bit, Lawrence. It might be worth dropping out of the call and then reconnecting.
Okay, mate. Okay. Right. Okay. I'll come back.
So we've lost Lawrence for a moment while we get some sound back. I don't know, what can I chat about while I've lost Lawrence? He's talking about some pretty way out there stuff, and he's done a lot of work. I highly advise everyone tunes into his workshop. It's a little bit heavy going to take in, and hopefully you'll follow as oh, he's back. You back, Lawrence?
I'm just going to turn this camera on. We're back.
There we go.
That's good.
Okay, cool. I might move on from the sun as that went disastrously badly, and then we lost a bit of audio. Can we come back onto the subject of gyroscopes?
We can. Yeah, you probably know more about them than I do, but all I've heard is the stuff on Mark Sargent's show when they've had these guys coming on. For me, gyroscopes is Eric Laithwaite and him spinning those things, and they become weightless.
Okay, I mean, well, you've got a gyroscope that gives you your false horizon on a plane, and they spin it up and reference it to the ground. And when they take off from California and land in London, it's essentially exactly the same as when they took off. And the attitude gyroscope is on 3 axes, so essentially it's completely free floating. It's not supposed to move at all, so that it can reference the horizon, the false horizon, which is of course flat when they're presented with it in the cockpit. But that gyroscope essentially is a fundamental proof of flat Earth. I know you were talking about nosing down the plane and that they don't nose down. Well, they would notice that they were nosing down based on the position of the gyroscope, and as they move around the globe, it should stay like that. As it moves around the globe, it should stay in that position. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
as it spins.
Nathan, you probably know more about gyroscopes than nobody's educated me on them so far. But I did go on a holiday flight a few weeks back, and it was quite funny because there were some teenagers in the seats in front of me, and they were looking out and saying, "Look, Mum, it's flat. It's all over Facebook."
But it is. This is the thing. It's just so fundamental. I know that Antonio and I were recently chatting.
Nathan, I was sat outside a restaurant a few weeks back. And this guy came up to me. He says, "You're the flat Earth man, aren't you?" He's talking to me. I've never met the guy in my life. He's talking to me outside this restaurant.
Well, I found something out just before the show started, which you dropped on me, which I didn't know, which is you're more famous than most flat earthers. You've been on TV.
Well, I did a 2-hour show on it's called Edge Media TV. It was Sky Channel 200, I think it was. It was back in 2012, and a friend. I was just in the car park at New Horizons where I did the talk, and this guy met me in the carpool, and he says, "Would you like to go on TV? I've got a 2-hour show." And I think you'd be good for the show. So I was on this show, and we were talking about alternative health and, the National Health Service being a national illness service and big pharma and all that sort of stuff. And I was bringing on all my devices of, alternative health, like violet ray machines and pulsing, tensing machines and ozone machines, and we've got water bubbling away and ozone bubbling through stuff, showing all the muck that was in meat and stuff like that. But the presenter, what he did part way through the show, he says, right, there's a commercial break coming up now, and he says, right, get all your kit off. When we come back, we're just going to sat there with ties. So anyway, the commercial break ended, and me and Grayling, we were sat in front of the cameras on national TV, just a tie on, talking about health. You could hear the cameraman laughing his socks off. It was quite interesting because it was pay-per-view. So the first hour was free, and the second hour, people had to pay £3 or £4 to watch the second half. And they told us afterwards that we broke the box office records and beat David Icke. So they owe me a bit of commission there.
Absolutely love it.
But they shut down shortly after that because I hadn't got another chat to talk. You know, I talk about total random subjects. I just get interested in something, research it for 6 months, and then do a talk on it somewhere. You know, and generally speaking, as long as you know a bit more about it than the audience, then you know, you've got credibility.
Oh, you mentioned ozone machines.
Because if you go on, oh yeah, most people are under the misconception that ozone is harmful and that it's a finite substance, but there is an ozone cycle and it's being continually replenished, and it's actually formed when regular oxygen is O2, and that rises up because it's lighter than air, and when it gets so high, the ultraviolet light breaks it down into single oxygen atoms, which are known as ozone, and they are very unstable. They stick together and become heavier than air, and the ozone falls down to Earth. When it gets into the clouds, it forms a weak form of hydrogen peroxide, which is a very good sterilizing agent, and it's that keeps the seas, the oceans, and the lakes from going, stagnant. So if you want to see my video on oxygen therapies, just type in Lawrence Wright oxygen therapies, and you can see my madcap presentation on that. I'll be wearing a green jumper.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Ozone is the most healing substance on the planet. The Hebrew translation of ozone is the breath of God.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, talking of things that are pretty amazing, like godlike, the Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights was another topic we touched on when we were talking on the phone. Can you tell us a little bit about the Northern Lights, maybe?
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of official theories on that, but it's the rare gases, in my view, that causes it. So I've got an ozone machine here. Let me show it to you. I have to plug it in. Let's have a look. There's the ozone machine. Okay, so I'll turn it on. Get a plug to reach it. Just a minute. I might have to bring the webcam over to it. There we go. There's the ozone machine. I'll stick it on full blast. Oops. On. Just turn the lights out. There we go. Come on, off. Now, off. Just a minute.
Oh,
I'm going to turn this round the other way. Just a minute. Plugs come out. I'm going to turn this table round a little bit.
okay.
There we go. All right, and then you can see. Plug it in again. On. Turn the lights out, and we're cooking on gas. Do you see the purple glow? Did you see the purple glow there, Nathan?
Yes. Very faint, but yes.
Just a minute. Pull the plug out. Hang on, I'll try again. Keep it there. Oops. Right, you should be able to see a purple glow.
Yes, yes, you
Yeah.
can.
So that's electricity being passed over a plate on one side. They put glass on one side, like the glass sky. You can imagine that there was a firmament made of glass. Imagine there's a firmament made of glass. You've got the sun shining through the glass, creating ozone, just like this machine now is doing. And it's the ozone, it's part of the cycle on Earth that actually, keeps everything sterile, stops everything going bad. So ozone is the most healing substance on the planet. I'll just turn that off a second. Put the lights back on.
Does that link back into the two suns thing we were talking about?
Sorry, mate. What did you say?
You were talking. The first thing we talked about when we were on the phone about 2 weeks ago was the two suns.
Oh, the two suns. Yeah. Let me just cover. Obviously, so you've got the rest of this aurora, the Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis, all the different names you've got for it, and all these colours are like the rare gases, like neon will glow red, and sodium I think glows yellow. Not sodium. There's argon, and they all glow different colours when electricity or magnetic forces are applied to them. I think that's what's causing these effects. But you can see them from the UK. You don't have to go up to northern Sweden to see them. If you go on, you can see them on a guy from Anglesey who does loads of photographs. I posted one on Facebook today, so I've got a few Facebook friends that they've seen it. It's on Laurie Fairey's FlatEarthConspiracy.com page. Sorry, mate. What did you say?
I said certainly seen loads of photos. After you mentioned it, I had a quick search on Google and found loads of images from up in Scotland.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the next question?
Well, I just thought when you were talking about the electricity in the firmament that was connected back to the two suns, but it was actually you were explaining about the gases and having electricity passed through them, presumably along the lines of the electromagnetic theories.
The two suns is a strong possibility. I mean, you can do it now. So if you go to Google and type in Casey Station webcam, you can see they show the previous 48 hours of what's happening, and you can see light turning to day at the station because the camera's focused on it, and you can see the lights coming off and going on, and you can see the sun coming over. And I did it in the winter when the sun was out 24/7. And what I did, I took screenshots every hour. It's time stamped in the top right hand corner. So I took all these screenshots, and then you can see the shadows of the sun on vehicles and people on the building. And I just drew a line and a point on it to say where the sun was coming from. And what you have there, you have got shadows going north, south, east, and west, every possible direction. And that's impossible for a sun that is circling or going in a straight line across the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the furthest south it's going. You would never get shadows in every direction. You would have to be inside the circle of the sun to get shadows in every direction. So if you're south of the Tropic of Capricorn, then you should not get shadows in every direction. If the sun, was just you shouldn't get it.
I mean, you're what I would call now a die-hard flat earther. Do you think there's ever going to be anything that comes along that convinces you it's a globe?
No, it's impossible. No. I mean, I had dance as a kid. I got my first globe when I was 7 years old, and I had some strange thoughts about it. Can't remember what they are. And then when I was 13 years old in geography, we see a picture of a ship sailing over the edge of the Earth. And I remember my thoughts at the time back then, I wasn't thinking how strange it was. What I found strange was, why would they be telling me this? Why are they telling me in geography that ships were once thought to sail off the edge of the Earth? What was that about? And then, the next thing I ever saw about flat Earth was how they were stereotyped. And your typical flat earther would be wearing green wellies, a green cardigan, and they'd have a big bushy beard and some spectacles on. Maybe to stereotype them, to think these guys, they're harmless, they're very eccentric, but don't take them seriously. I think that they do try to stereotype people.
Horizons videos.
Yeah, there was a few people there like that. Yeah.
I mean, your history prior to flat Earth is very, very conspiratorial, and I'd like to, if you're willing, talk about some of those things that we chatted about on the phone. Maybe we could start with the Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles. What's happened there? Just a second. I hate it. The Beatles. Yeah. Well, I did a talk about the Beatles in the summer of 2012, but I researched them for 6 months beforehand. So I've got a huge amount of information, looking at thousands and thousands of photographs. But what sparked it off? The first thing, a lot of stuff sort of leads to another, and there's a channel, and they put so much disinfo out, but they do put some truths out there. And it's that channel called Stuff They Don't Want You Know. You know, it says from conspiracy theories to ghost stories and all that sort of stuff. And they put this thing on about Paul McCartney being somebody else. So I spent ages looking into that and thought, yeah, that's right, you know, and I was chatting to a few people. Next thing I know, I got an email from a woman in Ireland. And this woman, she was an artist, and she'd gone to an island that John Lennon had bought in the 60s. And while she was there, she was inspired to paint pictures of the Beatles. So when she got home, she started looking at all the photographs throughout the ages, and she noticed that, you know, after 1966, they were all different. And she was right. So in 1966, every last one of the Beatles was replaced. Now, this truth is hidden in plain sight. So if you go onto images and look for Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club album, you look on that, right in the middle of the screen, there's a big pile of dirt, and you've got the Beatles' name spelt out in flowers. And on one side, you've got the Beatles as they were in the early 60s, where they were very smart in their suits. And then on the other side, you've got the fake Beatles with their beards and moustaches and colourful clothing to disguise the fact that they were somebody else. And of course, the Beatles never toured again after 66 because they couldn't. People would recognise that they were somebody else. And I spent months looking at all the photographs and comparing it. There were several John Lennons, for example. The John Lennon that died in 1980 wasn't even the fake John Lennon. It was a John Doe. The fake John Lennon was probably sent off to, you know, South America somewhere. The guy who dealt with him at the medical centre when he was shot, or whoever was shot, he was his neighbour, and he would have recognised him. And when they looked through the pockets, they couldn't believe it was John Lennon. And that was the only, you know, when they found the driving licence or whatever it was in his pockets, they saw that it was John Lennon. But if you look at the photographs of John Lennon through the years, you know, there's several of them. I mean, the fake John Lennon made a movie called something like How We Won the War. It was a typical British drama film in the mid-60s. And the John Lennon in that is a big, spindly, weedy guy, and nothing like the big, strapping guy that John Lennon was. Anyway, so I did this talk about the Beatles, and normally they get about 30 people turning up. And this time, it was a full house. They probably hold about 120. I got a full house, and I've got all these frosty faces in the audience at this Beatles presentation. But they couldn't argue it. The evidence was, you know, compelling that they were all replaced. And then shortly after that, my entire life fell apart. I was made homeless, my car blew up, and I've got a comedian, a famous comedian from Scotland, who'd gone off the wire a bit, who I was helping at the time, threatening to murder me. My business went under. You know, all hell broke loose. And so I just had to sort of go underground for 12 months, let it all settle down. I thought maybe that's a message that you don't talk about the Beatles. Because if you try and talk about this stuff on David Icke's site, they bring all the trolls out and close you down. And there's a girl she's got a site called Plastic Maca, and she talks about Paul is dead. And she knows that they were all replaced, but she doesn't talk about them all being replaced because she's had death threats. So it's not an area that you really want to go to because, you know, they don't, you know, it would be something they don't want to get out, that the Beatles were replaced. Not just the Beatles, David Bowie was replaced, Elvis was replaced, Michael Jackson was replaced. That's so obvious with all the plastic surgery. And the biggest giveaway for the acting profession is Sylvester Stallone, because he was replaced by Tommy Sands. And you can go and look at the pictures, and it's so obvious. There's so many. There's a good website, it's called Whale 2, and you can type in movie mafia or music mafia, and you can see all these personalities that have been switched about. I mean, the biggest shock to me was that Amy Winehouse is now Lady Gaga. And I thought, no, I can't be. But when you look into it and you look at the evidence, it's quite compelling. I'm not saying it's true, but it makes quite compelling evidence, you know, when you start digging into this stuff. And the other one was Jimmy Carter. If you look at some of these pictures of Jimmy Carter and his ears and his face and his demeanour, it's a spitting image of an older JFK. And so I started digging into that. So if you go on Google Images for JFK's wedding, you get hundreds, thousands of photographs of his wedding. You go look for Jimmy Carter's wedding, he got married, there's not a single photograph. In fact, you look for Jimmy Carter, old photographs, there's one picture of him as a sailor. So I'm thinking Jimmy Carter is actually, you know, a reincarnated JFK. JFK never died. It was just a movie. I mean, you think about the Zapruder film, it wasn't released till the early 70s, you know, 7 or 8 years after the event. So what you got to see was what they wanted you to see. And you've had all these theories that, oh, it was the driver that did it. No, it was Jackie that did it. Oh, it was some lone gunman on the Nolly Hill. All these theories, but they've all got the same conclusion, that JFK died. Well, what if he didn't die? What if he was in it so we could have continuation of government? You know, maybe this was to get a traumatic effect on the American people to traumatize them for some reason. And there's a book, if you go on Fakeologist, there's a book about it, you know, what really happened to JFK. Not many people talk about it. Most conspiracy theorists, you know, they always talk about JFK as though he did die, but I don't think he did. I think he's still with us. I mean, Jimmy Carter, at worst, is his brother, you know, you start looking at it, because apparently JFK's dad had a secret son. Start digging into it.
You recommended quite a few channels like Whale 2 and Music Mafia, and certainly Whale 2 I was just suckered in for hours and hours. How much of it I believe, as we talked before the show, well, I don't know, I won't say. Tiger Dan would say, spit out chew the meat and spit out the bones. But Patricia wouldn't like that, so chew the the celery and spit out the pine nuts.
Spit out the fibre.
Yeah, I mean, while we're still on this subject, because there's loads of channels out there now that are looking at things like castratos and claiming that a lot of the female musicians who are currently in the popular music scene have started out life as men and been fed a load of hormones or whatever. Do you buy into any of that? Absolutely. I mean, you've seen the picture of Michelle Obama where there's a huge bulge, you know, right in the groin area. And she went on the Ellen show in America and did about 35 press-ups without stopping for breath. I mean, everybody knows Obama's gay, and Michelle Obama is Michael. He let it slip in one of his interviews. He called her Michael. And there's lots of others, like the Williams sisters, continue winning tournaments into their 30s. They were born men and you know, but have been pretending to be women. They may well have had some surgery and hormones, but they were born men. And there's a lot of talk about David Cameron, that his wife is also a man. She does look a bit horsey. And others, you know, there's this gay mafia maybe that's out there where you know, the leaders of large countries, that they're gay, and they you know, they've got a man masquerading as a woman as their first lady or whatever they call it in those countries. It doesn't surprise me a bit. And of course, with all the politicians, they get the blackmail on them before they come into power, so that they'll do as they're told, like the one with David Cameron sticking his cock in a pig's mouth. And that was in that movie, wasn't it? You know, the Broken Mirror, whatever it's called, Cracked Mirror, Broken Mirror. You know, not a documentary, it was a play, wasn't it? And then a few months later, somebody in Parliament says it's true, and then the next thing you know, there's a picture of it on Facebook. Yeah, I mean, when they show us this stuff, they show us the skull and bones society with all the homosexual activities that they get up to, and they really shove it down our throats, but they do it in the conspiracy realm. So it's always back to Alex Jones, but people who are dressed up in the guise of being in the alternative media, but it's just in the media and he's showing us this stuff. I mean, why do you think the transgender agenda's even there? Why is it there, the transgenders? I think they want to stop people having sex, basically. I think that's what it boils down to. You know, the more gay people they've got, the less population's going to be. You know, it's maybe they're part of their
a small part of their target to get us down to the Georgia Guidestones figure. Have you got any views on it?
I'll talk about this with Antonio on Mechanics of the Fourth Wall. I think you scratch the surface and find that they're trying to turn men into women and women into men, and that's not what they're hiding. They're just trying to find the next level of Illuminati programming, or whatever you want to call it. You scratch the surface a bit further and find that they're turning people into the depiction of Baphomet, a guy with breasts. Maybe that's just me, but that's where I think they're trying to.
They're trying to normalise things. People who are not ordinarily would not be perceived as normal. And now it's all in the schools, isn't it? And they have transgender teaching. It was on Facebook today. Darren Nesbitt put something about they're doing transgender workshops for 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds. That's what they do. But Bill Hicks, also known as Alex Jones, he cracked a brilliant joke about that, didn't he? When he was talking about the gay guy and the gay woman. Mummy's new girlfriend, he was all right with the girl, but not with the boy.
You also brought up another potential doppelganger, which is a very, very prevalent flat earther. Do you want me to voice this, or will you do it?
Yeah, go ahead. It's out there. There's so many people that know this, but they don't tend to voice it. But yeah, you go ahead, mate. Yeah.
Well, I don't see it, but you said Rick Clay, and you've given me all of the backstory and the dates tying up.
Let me tell you the story of how that came about, Nathan. So it was about February 2014 or 15, and Eric DeBay unfriended me because I said he was being unreasonable, taking people off IFAs for being boring or long-winded in their questions. I think it was that English guy or the American guy who talks on for ages about all sorts of stuff. Mark Sargent calls him the most intelligent guy on Flat Earth, or the most talkative guy. You know what I mean? And so I thought, that's a bit odd. I'm going to do some digging into this Eric Dubé. And funny enough, at the same time, you get these things coming up on your screen, and this thing, when you're watching videos, one came up about this guy called Rick Clay on Red Ice Radio. And sometimes you get these signals from the universe or whatever. So I started looking into this Rick Clay, and I thought, God, pictures of him. I think, God, he was gay. He was into yoga. He was heavily into numerology. You can find his numerology on the internet now. I think he's on Whale 2. And this guy allegedly committed suicide. I think it was 2008, in the autumn sometime or late summer. And what happens? Eric Dubé comes on the scene, 2 or 3 weeks later, and he opens his Atlantean conspiracy channel. So I thought I'll go and have a look at that, and you start looking at the archives, and he's got a radio show. So he started his radio show, around about the time Rick Clay died. And who's he talking about on the radio show? Rick Clay. And what a fucking great guy Rick Clay is. Well, Eric's always talking about in the third person, saying what a great guy he is. And, he's got his 200 proofs, and he's solely responsible for bringing Flat Earth to the people. And Eric's the big macho guy doing the Kung Fu and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's to make people think he's not gay. He's a tough guy. But you look at the picture of him with his girlfriend, the little snapshots, there's no sexual chemistry there. It's just his girlfriend. They're not lovers or anything. And now you've seen his latest videos where Eric can act, put on voices, and go in drag. So when he was Rick Clay, he's got a broad Yorkshire accent. I can't do Yorkshire. So he can put on voices, and I'm thinking, that's who he is. And then I started looking at photographs of them. They fold their arms in the same way, same body type. The fingers were all the same. I looked at the jawline. The jawline was a perfect match. Of course, one always wear a hat, so it's hard to tell. Eric may have had some plastic surgery since, and he's definitely been working out to try and make himself look bigger. But on his show, there was his dad, Clay Senior, forget his name, Roger Clay. And it was so obvious on the show because Eric was really nervous that this guy was his dad. Sorry, he was Minder. And Anyway, I thought nothing more about it. I told a few people on Facebook, and something, yeah, and then some of them talk about it privately, and they mention it in comments, but they don't put any YouTubes about it. Anyway, I thought nothing more of it until Mark Sargent went on Fecologist. And I thought, it's a good show, that Fecologist. I'll go and have a look and see what else he's got. And the first thing I see, Rick Clay, is Eric Dubay. And I look at this guy's got everything, point by point. 3 months later, to what they come up with. And I thought, fuck me, this has got to be true. And so I thought, I'll do some more digging. So I find out Eric's date of birth. I haven't got them in front of me, September, October. They're about 34 now. Anyway, I couldn't find Rick Clay's date of birth. So I looked at, he's got a tribute page on Facebook. So I'm panning through this to try and find his birthday. Anyway, I find one, and it's RIP Eric, whatever, happy birthday. So that I looked at that birthday and looked at Eric's birthday, and lo and behold, they're exactly the same age, apart from, guess how many days? 33. And I thought, yeah, that's it. This Rick Clay is an actor. He's one of these people who they take out and they put them in limbo somewhere, and then they bring them out for some project. I think Eric Dubai's under some kind of mind control, and he's fulfilling some agenda for the New World Order.
Well, the way you described it, a good asset.
Well, just look at the way Eric's behaved, yeah? Everybody gets kicked off his side. Nobody can ask any questions. There's no fucker there. And all the administration people are the most fucking horrible people you'd ever wish to meet. They slag off everybody who comes on, whatever they say.
I mean, I'm going to round out the show shortly by asking you for your favourite.
The other thing, I'll tell you how I know Eric Dubay is scripted. Yeah, he was on a show, so he's reading from notes. I think Mark Sargent might be as well on some of his shows. Mind you, he don't need to now. He said the same thing about a million times. But when Eric was on, he was talking about the moon, and he was talking about the Poch marks. Poch, P-O-C-H. Well, it's Poch, so he couldn't read the script that said Poch. He read it as Poch. So Eric's scripted. That's why he never does, random interviews with people where he doesn't know what's going to hit him next. He'll always do something that's in a very controlled environment where he knows what the questions are going to be, because they're probably in on it with him.
That's not true. I've seen he was on was it Baller Skeptic, John LeBon show? I don't think he was scripted for that.
That was probably the only one he's done.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing a good service if I didn't take John LeBon's tact here and say, do you actually have any evidence that people are paid to interrupt the flat Earth movement?
Not at all. No, absolutely not. No, I mean, I don't know what's going on with all these people who, now we've given the evidence that the model is pile of pants. Why they're still sticking with it and arguing tooth and nail, like what's his name, down the rabbit hole guy, David Weiss. We've got supersonic, long haul jets now, but they only do supersonic on this particular route in the southern hemisphere. And he keeps arguing tooth and nail and does videos about it. But then you can't go on his YouTubes and pass a comment because all comments are blocked. Nice one, David.
Is that right? Yeah, he's in the chat room right now, actually.
Yeah, no, you can't. He probably allowed it in the past, but he was probably getting so much stick he doesn't do it anymore. Right. But Dave, all credit to David Weiss, because I research alternative health. David's quite well up on alternative health, and the stuff he's coming out with is quite good.
Fair enough.
So you get some.
I was going to get your favourite flat Earth proof before we round out the show, but as we've brought him up, I know he gives you a lot of stick.
My favourite is aeroplanes. We've covered it. Aeroplane on a plane. The plane doesn't dip. It's wherever far you go. Unless there's turbulence and you've got to get higher or lower to avoid it, it's dead straight all the way. I went on the last plane I went on, and I took my spirit level with me, and I was going to film it, but it was a Ryanair flight, and the bloody trays were all rickety. So I thought, oh fuck it, I'm not going to give up. But he had people on the plane talking about it, and I was sat. My girlfriend, we've got two different seats because we hadn't booked seats. Bloody Ryanair, they charge you bloody £5 to book seats. I'm not paying that. So I sat next to two complete strangers, and I'm giving them the flat earth for the whole journey. It was great. Cool. Well, the woman was buying into it, and the guy thought I was total fucking nuts, but he was stuck with me for the next 4 hours.
Cool.
Flat Earth, yeah.
I mean, my suggestion to you, Lawrence, with regards to people like John Le Bon, and I will get your opinion on him before we round out the show, but with people certainly like David Weiss, just drop him an email.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. I haven't got his email address, but I don't think he really wants to talk to me because we invited him onto our show to address what he was saying, but he wouldn't come on. And we invited him to come on, didn't do it.
Well, you can have it here for us then. He's in the chat room and he's just said, tell him, drop me a line. So he'll definitely respond to you. He's just said in the chat room.
If he wants to come on our show and put forward the case for the AE map, you're all welcome. If you want to come on, we'll
I don't think the AE map works. I mean, I had him on the show and he was saying, I know it doesn't work. It's as good as we've got. And my attitude's very different. My attitude is it's outrageous. We should have much better. Yeah. And my applause goes out to you, Lawrence, because you're working really hard. And same for Dr. Zach and various other people. But why the general public having to do this? It's outrageous, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It should be there for us. That map there, I don't know whether you can see it, but that should be the Mercator map. It is the Mercator map with all the distortions taken out. If you look at 60 degrees north, it's only about 10,000 miles across. Yet on the Mercator map, it's shown as 25,000 miles across. So we're not even given the proper maps in the schools.
Well, I'm hoping this has been a bit of a go-between between yourself, Laurie, and David Weiss, because he's in the chat room seeming all keen, and I think there's been a bit of a breakdown in communication between you guys. So I'm hoping
you should say that, Nathan. No, seriously, mate. John Le Bon, I mean, I do some Skypes with John Le Bon. You won't believe it. He's only about 26, and he's a bit of a hippie at type. I saw him and he was sat in his bathrobe with a hair down to his shoulders, but he looks a lot younger when he puts a turban on. But John Le Bon's a great guy. I don't agree with him on everything, but yeah, he's a great guy, and he's talking about doing a show where all the different flat Earth protagonists can have a serious discussion, with no forbidden subjects. We can talk about anything, hang out. And I've said I'll do it. So he's going to be asking other people. He might want you to go on,
Yeah, he chatted about it with me, and what he was proposing was basically, round table. And he's very good at hosting these things and sort of keeping control of people. But basically, he's proposing that every side of the equation comes forward and puts their model. So you have people from the globe side, and you have people from the AE side, or the sinusoidal side, or the infinite plane side, or the dome side, and they basically all put their models forward, and it gets debated and pulled to pieces. And I think that's a very, very good idea. I've got a lot of time for John Le Bon.
Yeah, I mean, John's got, John thinks, sorry, John, but I mean, I quite agree. John thinks that, most of the old Greek philosophers, like Plato and Hippocrates and what's his name, Pythagoras and Aristotle and all those people, he thinks they're all fictitious. They were just made up and written into the history books. And maybe Copernicus was the same. And of course, we've got no control of what we read in the books. And he's got a good point there. And, we may well have 1,000 years of false history, written into the history books. It may well be the next subject people get into, but there's not a lot of information out there about it. I mean, there's only one subject really more controversial than flat Earth, and people aren't really latching onto it at the moment, and that is that regarding immortality. And I think it's possible, and I think amongst us we have people who are actually immortal and keep living, and they have to keep reinventing themselves when they look too old for a passport. Or they have to keep putting makeup on. People like Keanu Reeves and the like. I'm pretty sure that there are immortals amongst us, and they put it in the movies as well. And there is if you go to the Book of Aquarius, there's a 10-hour audio book which you can listen to, and I've listened to it a few times, and it gives you step-by-step instructions as to how you make the Philosopher's Stone, which gives you immortality and gives you the ability to transmute base metals into gold, because apparently all metals are the same when they're in the crust of the earth. They're just at different levels of purity within the earth, and they mature and they eventually become gold. If you take them out of the earth before they mature, they just stay as they are. But apparently you can actually make this Philosopher's Stone, and if you ingest it, you go back to the age of 25 all your teeth fall out, they all regrow, all your hair grows out, grows back in the proper colour, all your wrinkles go, and you have the perfect body, and you're immortal, and you get great learning capacity. So you just learn things just like that. Everything's sort of perfect as we should be, but we are programmed to age. So if you can imagine a photocopier, if you photocopied this paper, if you photocopied this paper and then took a photocopy of the copy and copied it and kept photocopying the copy, eventually this piece of paper, you won't be able to read it. And apparently that's what happens to the ends of our DNA, the telomeres. Once you get past age 25, they start replacing themselves, slightly imperfect, and it happens more and more as you get older, and then you get the sagging of the skin and the jowls. Well, this philosopher's stone reverses all that, gives you the perfection of age 25, because, you know, maybe there's all these instances in the Bible of people living 700, 800 years old, 1,000 years old. Well, how did that happen? You know, why do we only live for...
You know, Lawrence, there's a jellyfish called the eternal jellyfish that does exactly that. It basically regenerates and has another life.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, you know. And this, you know, it's like time, isn't it? Most, you know, does time exist? You know, why do we age? You know, if you don't believe in time, does your age freeze at where you are? You know, if you truly don't believe in the concept of time, and you eat perfect food, maybe you don't age.
What's the craziest conspiracy that you actually covered, Lawrence?
Which conspiracies? Well, obviously, health. You know, I make cancer cures myself, and I've helped lots of people get well from cancer. I've had cancer myself. I've had cancer on my head, all this side of my head, a huge section of my back. I've got photographs of some of it. Testicular cancer, cancer on my back, cancer on my face, cured myself. My dog had cancer. Every girlfriend I've had didn't have cancer, but found out they got cancer a few weeks after we met, which is so bizarre. 5 girlfriends on the trot, all had cancer. They're all well now, and none of them went to mainstream medicine. How bizarre! What's the chances of that? It's billions to one. There is a divine force out there that makes things happen. It's synchronicity. It's serendipity. It's these things that happen, and when you know that there's some divine force out there, you know there's a power. There's a power for good out there and a power for evil, and they're at each other. So I'm sure there's people. You know, I'm sure there's an Illuminati for the good as well as one for the bad out there, and they're fighting against, you know, like the gods. They're fighting a war between the good and evil, and we're on the side of good, trying to end this tyranny that we've got on Earth, where, you know, you've got to ask permission for everything. You know, you can't even park outside your own house. You've got to pay to have your bins emptied. You know, and it's gone too far, hasn't it? Big Brother's gone too far. You need permission for everything. You know, like they're doing you a favour to let you go on your holidays, and you know, I mean, go to the passport office now, Liverpool. You've got to go through a frigging metal detector to buy a passport. What's all that about? You think you're going to blow the passport office up? You know, they've gone mad. The security's gone totally mad, and people buy into all this shit. You know, we're not free.
Would you say you're actually for being on flat Earth since discovering the lies?
Oh, I let it all ride over me. I don't let this stuff stress me out. It's pointless, you know. I'm just enjoying the journey, because now is the most exciting time to be alive ever, because all this stuff is happening. You know, we're going to get some major, you know, all this is going to come out over in the next 15, 20 years, I think. And, you know, it's going to be, you know, what's that movie with the guy where they all have got that V mask on, you know, V for Vendetta. That's what I'd love to see, you know, 1 million people outside Parliament with V for Vendetta, and string up all the politicians, all the perverts. Well, don't kill them, you know, put them in the stocks and throw rotten tomatoes at them, throw them all out, and have a real government, a minimal government, who just provided the basic services that we need and protect us from where we need protecting, but not treating it as a money-generating exercise. You know, I was driving home from one of my talks in Liverpool, and I stopped services on the way because I'm driving home in the middle of the night. So I stopped for a nap for about an hour, and I'm waking up and I'm a bit groggy, and I'm driving along the coast road. Next thing you know, I've got a police car coming up the back of me, flashing the lights. So I thought, well, I've done nothing wrong. Fuck this. I'm not stopping for these police. Fuck them. Anyway, they followed me for about 30 miles, and they were dazzling me. So I thought, I have to pull in at the petrol station. Pull in. Next thing you know, I'm handcuffed, thrown into the back of a car. Yeah, and then they search everything in my car, asking me 50 questions and stuff. Charging me with all sorts of stuff. I says, I don't know you're the real police. You could be anybody. I'm not going to stop for somebody I don't know. And that's it. But that's what they do with the police. They put low IQ people in positions of power for things like that. So they do as they're told.
Yeah, definitely back to the 1994 Big Brother.
So the free-man movement's great, and you can try and enforce your liberty. Because I got done for having my MOT was a day out of date. And I was sat in the back of this police car. And he says, don't worry. He said, there's no points going on your license. He said, or it's going to cost you 60 quid, one of these on the spot fine type things. And he was writing a ticket out and he passed it around the back for me to sign. And I says, well, before I look at that, I said, can you tell me, is this a criminal offence or a civil offence? And he said, it's criminal. I says, actually, no, it's a civil offence. And I said, for a civil offence, there has to be a contract. And by me signing this piece of paper for this £60 fine, I'm entering a contract with you to pay you £60. Well, I'm not going to sign it, so you can take that back to your chief constable and tell him to stick it where the sun don't shine. He says, you're refusing to sign it? I said, that's right, I'm refusing to sign it. Are we done? Yeah, can I go? Anyway, he let me go. Anyway, 6 months later, some obscure agency, nothing to do with any courts or the police, sent me this fine for 80 quid. So I ended up having to pay it anyway, because I was unemployed then, so they were taking it out of my benefits. So the bastards get you anyway. And the other thing was, if your taxes run out and you pay the on-the-spot fine, they get you from the DVLA. They send you another fine for the same amount. I got fined 40 quid twice.
There's absolutely no.
It's like the Devon and Cornwall police. They're a private corporation. They're owned by IBM, the computer company. You can go and check any courthouse. They're all registered on Dun and Bradstreet, the checking agency, same as every local authority. They're all private companies, as is every member of parliament. They're all registered. They're businesses.
I mean, this was something that I didn't think we'd touch on, actually. You said that in some of your flat earth investigations, you'd come across a lot of the banking information.
Yeah, I mean... Well, not from flat earth, from the other stuff. It's like the printing of money. When you go and sign the paper for a mortgage with the bank doesn't actually have the money, but the money's created by your signature. That gives them the security. They write the money into thin air, tap it into a computer, it's in your bank account. So you pay the interest back and the money, for the next 25 years, and it hasn't cost them a penny. And it's like all this quantitative easing that the British government, hundreds of billions of pounds. Now our government can legally print the money at zero cost and feed it into the economy, but they don't. What they do, they get the Bank of England, which is a private consortium of banks headed up by the Rothschild family. They create the money digitally out of nothing, and then they charge us interest on it, and we have to pay the capital back. So the British taxpayer has got to pay all this money back plus interest from money that never existed in the first place. And if you look at the amount of money that's paid in income tax, all that money, income tax does not go to pay for any goods, any public services. The whole bloody lot is to service the national debt that everybody owns, which is whatever, £50,000 per head. That's what we're paying the national debt for. And it's all going to private bankers. And the sooner people realise that, the better. And a lot of people, Darren Nesbitt, he's been on a lot of these protests outside where they go to repossess people's own. The bailiffs are there. They get about 50 truthers out there, and they've got all the law on their side, and they come and try and enforce these legal contracts, and the bailiffs end up going away with their tail between their legs, and the police are there as well, and the police have to enforce the law, and they usually do. And there was even a case in Birkenhead where they tried to arrest the judge.
No way.
Yeah, really. Judge arrested in Birkenhead. You can go and see the whole thing. The whole farce is going on in the courthouse. You can see him,
It's amazing.
This is news. Judge arrested in Birkenhead. Yeah, it's on there. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Cool.
There's all sorts going on. I mean, a lot of people get into flat Earth, but they don't realise all this other stuff's going on. There's a huge swathe of stuff that's not what you think it is. You've got money, you've got health, you've got all the governments being private corporations. You've got the free man movement. When your parents go and register your birth, yeah, they're handing you over to the government, and your birth certificate is security, which is traded. And when you look on a birth certificate, one of the things it says on is informant, but birth, BIRTH and BERTH, well, a berth is where a ship docks, so it's to do with the waters. So when you get done for a speeding fine, it's admiralty law of the sea. That's why when you go into a court, you have to go into the dock. It's all admiralty. It's when you're born, you come through the mother's waters, yeah, and that's the birth. Same as a ship docking, and you get these manifests and all this type of stuff. It's all connected, and they con you. So if you don't go in the dock, they can't charge you. You go to court, and you can say to the judge, "Are you on your oath?" And if they're on their oath, then they have to apply common law, which they don't. They're applying law of the sea. So a judge or a magistrate will never tell you that they will swear on their oath.
Yeah,
it's an interesting subject. Yeah.
Sorry about the echo. Have you seen some of the stuff about Gaddafi that's been publicised recently, and mainly about gold, I suppose?
I don't know. Apparently, Gaddafi was a good guy, and he looked after his people. And when people had babies, he gave them all 50,000 quid each. And apparently, he didn't really die. I don't think he died, or Saddam Hussein. I just think they used somebody else. I'm sure they're all part of the same thing. Maybe one or two are not. Maybe not Gaddafi, and maybe that guy in Venezuela. What was his name? The guy who used all the oil money for his people. They don't like people like that. People who actually use the country's wealth. But if you look at all the countries that so-called rogue states, these are the people who haven't signed up for the international bankers to have a central bank there. So you've got Iraq, Iran, North Korea, and places like that. And I think it's happened in Iceland, didn't it? Iceland said no, we're not having, we're not bailing out these banks that go bust. It's crazy, isn't it? The banks go bust, and the governments haven't got the money to bail them out. So the banks print the money and lend it to the government, and then gives it back to the banks. It's just totally bizarre.
Yeah, the system.
It's madness. It is, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping to round out on a more happy note. I mean, if you got, this is why I said earlier, to round out with maybe a flat Earth proof that's your favourite, but we've gone through the planes. I'd just like to end on something that's a bit more positive than the depressing situation with our banks.
Well, no, it's a great look. There's lots of people coming into this now. You just need to try and get the newbies in. Checking things out before they go talking to everybody else about it. That's what I want to say. A
nice way to round it out then, Lawrence. What would be your message to anybody who's watching this show who's a new flat earther? And then I'll say goodbye to the people watching and thank you for being on.
Well, don't take anything at face value. Does it make sense? Check it out. If you're good at math, go and research it. Go and take a look at the longitude and latitude calculators. Take a look at this diamond map. Print one off. Yeah, you can get a scale map printed off and go and do some routes. Let's get some weight behind this, because this is the best. Nobody's come out with a better one so far. It was thanks to Mark Sargent. So, Mark, thanks ever so much for putting that map on your cruise, because without it, we'd still be on the AE map or something else.
That's it.
So, yeah, or as what's his name says, you do it. What's his name? Truman. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. If I miss you. Yeah, stop talking to you, Nathan. Yeah, you want to come on our show if you want sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
If you can get a word in edgeways. Laurie talks a lot, but she's got a heart of gold and her heart's in the right place, and she does let me have a chat once in a while. And as long as I get my point out, I don't mind. But we're going to have some guests on so that, it breaks it up a little bit and we get some other points of view, because, we're a bit of a one-track show at the moment talking about the false model. Probably some other stuff that we need to look at, but you can't really do that until you've researched it. So, some of the other stuff's a bit complicated. Getting your head around it, that's the problem.
Yes, definitely.
But I'm glad to say that you're a genuine interviewer, mate, who's out to seek the truth, and you'll tell it as it is. That's good on you, mate, for doing that. You haven't got any hidden agenda. You just want to, you've seen the Earth is flat, and you want everybody to know about it. And you're going to get what's called FERBs soon. So watch out for FERBs. You'll need to take a break. FERBs, FERBS, Flat Earth Burnout Syndrome.
Oh, right. No, I get too much joy from it.
It's a medical condition. You can go and get a sick note. You tell the doctor, I've got furboss. I've been up all day and nights looking at the flat earth. And some of these people do. You look at them on Facebook and they posted it. Somebody from America's posting, I know their time's 5 hours, and they're posting me at 8 o'clock this morning. So I had to look where they were. It was 3 a.m. and they're sending me messages at 3 a.m.
Unreal.
You know, it's bizarre, isn't it? But then they're posting at 10 o'clock my time. I think, don't these people ever sleep?
So your message to the newcomers: don't get burnt out. Do your own research.
That's it, mate. Yeah, do some research. No, this is what everybody buy. When you go out shopping next time, go to the camping shop and buy a compass. Yeah, and find yourself a nice bit of flatland where you can see the sunrise and the sunset, or two places where the rises and set. And get up early one morning on June the 21st and take a compass reading and get the bearing of where the sun rises and where it sets. Yeah, it should be doing 240 degrees because in the UK we've got 16 hours of daylight. 16 over 24 is 2/3. 2/3 of 360, 240. It's got to be 240 degrees if the sun's circling. If he ain't, it's a straight line. There you have it.
You heard it here.
Thank you, folks. Definitely here. Good afternoon, good evening. Oh, good morning to everybody in Australia. So, John LeBron, good morning. Laurie Frary, Florida, good afternoon. And the evening, where have we got in the evening?
Yes.
Where have we got? Oh, UK, yes. Good evening, yes. And good night.
Lawrence Wright, yes, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Flat Earth UK Live. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, okay, man. We'll do the 2 Yorkshire Red next time. Yeah, we had it bad. We did. Yeah, we used to live in a shoebox on the M1. Yeah, we're lucky. Our dad used to beat us with a broken bottle if we were lucky. That was luxury. That were. We used to have to get up 3 hours before we went to bed, and then Dad had beat us to an inch of our life. When we got up, we had some cold brew for breakfast. We had to do 32 hours down the pit for tons a week if we were lucky.
Yeah, you're in chat. Thank you for being here, but you've all got it very easy.
Exactly, mate. Yeah.
Once again, Lawrence Wright, thank you for being here. And to all of you in chat, thank you very much for tuning into Flat Earth UK Live. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.